Around the world in 80 days.
Have you ever dreamed of traveling around the world? Imagine leaving your home with only a small bag, crossing oceans, deserts, jungles, and mountains, and trying to circle the entire Earth in just 80 days.
It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But one quiet and mysterious gentleman believed it could be done. His name was Phileas Fogg. What began as a simple bet soon became one of the greatest adventures ever told. Phileas Fogg lived in London, England. He was a wealthy gentleman who followed the same routine every day. He woke up at the same time, ate the same meals, and visited the same places.
His life was so regular that people joked they could set their clocks by him. No one knew very much about him. He had no family nearby and few close friends. He spent most of his time at the Reform Club, a private gentlemen's club in London. There he read newspapers, played cards, and discussed current events with other members. One morning, Fogg hired a new servant. His name was Jean Passepartout. Passepartout was French and had lived many different lives. He had worked as a circus performer, a singer, a teacher, and even a firefighter. After years of excitement and adventure, he wanted a peaceful job. He believed Mr. Fogg was the perfect employer because his life seemed calm and predictable. Passepartout was happy to begin his new position. That same evening, Mr. Fogg visited the Reform Club as usual. The members were discussing an article in the newspaper. The article claimed that new railways and steamships had made it possible to travel around the world in just 80 days. Some members doubted the claim. They argued that delays, storms, and accidents would make such a journey impossible. But Phileas Fogg calmly disagreed. "I believe it can be done," he said. The discussion became more serious. Soon, one of the members challenged him. "Would you be willing to try?" Fogg thought for a moment. "Yes," he replied. The room became silent. Then Fogg made an astonishing announcement. "I will leave tonight. I will travel around the world and return to this club exactly 80 days from now." The members were shocked. A bet was quickly arranged. Fogg placed £20,000 on the table, an enormous amount of money. "If I return within 80 days, I win," he said. The other members agreed. Without hesitation, Fogg stood up and left the club. When he arrived home, Passepartout was preparing for a quiet evening. "Pack a small bag," Fogg instructed. "We are leaving immediately." Passepartout stared at him in disbelief. "Leaving, sir? For where?" "Around the world." Within an hour, they were on their way to the train station. Their incredible journey had begun.
The first part of the trip went smoothly. They traveled from London to Paris and then continued across Europe. Trains carried them through beautiful countryside and busy cities. Passepartout was amazed by everything he saw. Unlike his master, who remained calm and unemotional, Passepartout often became excited by new places and experiences.
Meanwhile, unknown to them, another traveler had begun following them. A large bank robbery had recently taken place in London. The police believed the thief was a wealthy gentleman who had suddenly disappeared from the city. When Detective Fix heard about Phileas Fogg's sudden departure and unusual behavior, he became convinced that Fogg was the criminal. Fix decided to follow him around the world. His plan was simple. He would watch Fogg closely until an arrest warrant arrived from England. Then he would arrest him and bring him back. The detective boarded the same routes and secretly followed the travelers. Fogg and Passepartout soon arrived in Egypt. From there, they boarded a steamer crossing the Red Sea toward India. The voyage was pleasant, and they made good progress. However, their journey became more difficult after arriving in India. Part of the railway system was unfinished. Although maps showed a complete railroad, a section had not yet been built. The travelers suddenly discovered they could go no farther by train. Many people would have panicked. Phileas Fogg simply looked for another solution. After some investigation, he purchased an elephant and hired a guide. Passepartout had never imagined traveling on an elephant. The group crossed forests and rough countryside. The elephant moved steadily through areas where no railway existed. During this journey, they witnessed something shocking. A young Indian woman named Aouda was about to be forced into a dangerous religious ceremony following her husband's death. She was expected to die as part of the ritual. Fogg could have ignored the situation and continued his journey. Instead, he decided to help. Together with Passepartout and the guide, he planned a daring rescue. The rescue was extremely risky. They approached secretly and managed to save Aouda at the last moment. The group escaped safely. Although the rescue caused delays, Fogg never complained. Aouda was deeply grateful. She joined them as they continued toward Calcutta. Detective Fix watched everything from a distance. He found it difficult to believe that such a generous man could be a criminal. Yet he remained convinced that appearances could be deceptive. In Calcutta, new trouble appeared. The authorities accused Passepartout of entering a sacred temple without permission during an earlier sightseeing trip. As a result, legal proceedings delayed their departure. Fogg paid the necessary penalties and continued the journey. Every hour mattered. The travelers boarded a ship bound for Hong Kong. Along the way, Aouda and Passepartout became increasingly loyal to Fogg. They admired his courage, intelligence, and determination. Yet Fogg remained calm as always. His face rarely showed emotion. No matter what happened, he seemed to maintain complete control. When they reached Hong Kong, another problem emerged. Detective Fix had not yet received the arrest warrant. Desperate to delay Fogg, he attempted to manipulate Passepartout. Fix pretended to be a friend and secretly tried to prevent the travelers from leaving on time. Unfortunately, Passepartout became separated from his companions.
he struggled to reunite with them before departure. Meanwhile, Fogg and Aouda boarded a ship heading toward Japan.
Passepartout narrowly missed the departure.
For the first time since the journey began, the loyal servant found himself completely alone in a foreign country. He searched desperately for a way forward. After several difficulties, he managed to board another ship heading toward Japan. In Yokohama, he found work temporarily with a traveling circus to earn money and survive. One evening, while performing, he suddenly spotted Fogg and Aouda in the audience. The reunion was joyful. Passepartout immediately rejoined his master. The journey continued. From Japan, they boarded a ship crossing the Pacific Ocean toward the United States. The voyage was long but successful. When they finally reached San Francisco, they found themselves in a rapidly growing nation filled with energy and opportunity. The American Railway offered a route across the continent. However, crossing America would prove far from easy. The train journey began smoothly. Passengers enjoyed beautiful landscapes, mountains, rivers, and endless plains. Then, unexpected challenges appeared. At one point, political unrest and conflict created dangerous situations. Later, the train encountered a damaged section of track. Engineers worked desperately to keep the journey moving. In another memorable incident, the train was attacked by a group of warriors from the American frontier. Chaos erupted. Passengers fought to defend themselves. During the attack, Passepartout was captured while helping others. The train eventually escaped, but Passepartout was left behind. Time was running out. Every delay reduced their chances of winning the bet. Yet Phileas Fogg made a surprising decision. He refused to abandon his servant. Risking his own success, he returned to search for Passepartout. After a dangerous operation, Passepartout was rescued safely. The loyal servant was overwhelmed with gratitude. Although valuable time had been lost, their friendship had become even stronger. The journey continued eastward. Eventually, they reached New York. To their horror, they discovered that the ship they needed had already departed. Another major setback threatened the entire adventure. But Fogg remained calm. He searched for alternatives and found a small vessel willing to transport them part of the way. The trip across the Atlantic became one of the most dramatic parts of the journey. Bad weather slowed progress. Time slipped away. The captain disagreed with Fogg's plans. Eventually, Fogg purchased the ship itself. When fuel ran low, he ordered parts of the vessel dismantled and burned to power the engines. Piece by piece, sections of the ship disappeared into the furnace. The desperate strategy worked. The vessel continued moving. At last, they reached Europe. Yet the race against time was becoming more intense. Fogg hurried through France and toward England. Every connection, every train, and every ship became critical. After so many obstacles, they finally arrived back in England. But just as victory seemed certain, disaster struck. Detective Fix finally received what he believed was the long-awaited arrest warrant.
The moment Fogg arrived in Liverpool, Fix arrested him. Fogg was taken into custody. Hours passed. The delay seemed fatal. Then an extraordinary mistake was discovered. The real bank robber had already been captured. Phileas Fogg was completely innocent. Fix had spent months pursuing the wrong man. The detective immediately released him. Fogg rushed toward London, but according to his calculations, the delay meant he had lost the bet. When he finally reached home, he believed he had failed. For the first time in the story, defeat seemed to affect him deeply. He had spent nearly all his fortune on the journey. The bet appeared lost. The adventure was over. For several days, Fogg remained quiet. Then something unexpected happened. Aouda, who had traveled with him across the world, spoke honestly about her feelings. During their journey, she had come to admire and love him. She asked whether he would consider marrying her. For perhaps the first time in his carefully organized life, Phileas Fogg allowed himself to think about happiness instead of schedules. He happily agreed. Passepartout was delighted. He immediately began making arrangements for the wedding. The next day, Passepartout went out to speak with a minister. During the conversation, he suddenly learned something astonishing. The travelers had crossed the globe moving eastward. Because of this, they had gained 1 day while traveling around the world. Without realizing it, Fogg's calculations were wrong. Passepartout could hardly believe it. He raced back to tell his master. At first, Fogg was stunned. Then he quickly understood. The international dateline had changed everything. He was not late. He still had time. Immediately, Fogg rushed to the Reform Club. The members were gathered inside. They believed the bet was over. Many assumed Fogg would never appear. Then, at the exact final moment, the door opened. Phileas Fogg walked calmly into the room. The members stared in shock. He had completed the journey. He had traveled around the world in 80 days. Against storms, delays, missing trains, unfinished railways, mistaken arrests, dangerous attacks, and countless obstacles, he had succeeded. The bet was won. The room erupted with excitement. The impossible had become possible. Fogg recovered his money, but the greatest reward was not financial. During the journey, he had gained something far more valuable. He had found friendship in Passepartout. He had found love in Aouda. And he had discovered that life could be more than routines and schedules. People continued talking about the adventure for years. Some admired his precision of planning. Others admired his courage under pressure. Many remembered his willingness to help others, even when doing so threatened his own success. The journey proved that determination, intelligence, and calm thinking can overcome extraordinary challenges. Most importantly, it showed that sometimes the greatest discoveries are not the places we visit, but the people we meet
and the lessons we learn along the way. And so, the story of Phileas Fogg became one of the world's most beloved adventures,